So I think for me, the future of work is going to be seamless, and it's going to be freeing. So I think what will happen is I think a lot of the friction that I think folks kind of experience when they're going through their daily work, I think ultimately will be offset. And I think you're already starting to see some of that with even just some of the simple things that we see with Microsoft Copilot, like setting up your day and kind of prepping you for your daily agenda, things like that. Like those are things that used to take a lot of energy and time and focus away from the actual work that you had to get done. And so I feel like stripping away some of that friction and allowing you to harness all of your energy towards the thing that you're really looking to focus on, I think is going to be incredible. And I think that will then, I think, free people up to actually kind of really double down on the things that are important to them and what matter to them.
Hi, I'm Boaz, founder and CEO of Augmented AI Labs, and I'm excited that you're tuning into the Shift AI podcast, a show that explores what it takes to thrive and adapt to the changing workplace in the digital age of remote work and AI. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to welcome Roger Connolly, Chief Product Officer at Sitecore. Roger brings a wealth of experience from his impressive career, spanning over a decade at Victoria's Secret, followed by roles at Style Labs and now nearly 6 years at Sitecore, where he's risen through the ranks to his current leadership position. As we dive into the evolving landscape of marketing in the age of AI, Roger offers unique insights from Sitecore's position as a long-standing Microsoft partner and their work with major global brands like Nestle. We'll explore how AI is transforming content creation, brand management, and how marketers can stay relevant in a rapidly changing digital ecosystem. If you're interested in how companies are leveraging generative AI to enhance their marketing strategies, maintain brand consistency, and prepare for an immersive future, you won't want to miss this conversation. We also want to send out a special thank you to Augmented AI Labs for sponsoring this episode. This is going to be a great show as we explore the intersection of AI and marketing with Roger. Let's get to it. All right, Roger, great to have you on the show today. I am really excited to have you on the Shift AI podcast. We're going to be talking about marketing today, which I'm really interested in. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, Boaz. It's really a pleasure being here, and I'm excited to talk marketing, especially in the context of AI.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So before we start, I just want to go into your background a little bit to give some context to the listeners. I mean, you've spent a long career in the digital content space and the marketing space. You were with Victoria's Secrets for almost 11 years and then Style Labs, and now you're at Sitecore. You've been there for almost 6 years as, lots of different roles, senior director, vice president, but now you're the chief product officer. So you are in the mix on a lot of decisions that are getting made in the company about how to go to market. And you guys are a very close Microsoft partner too, have been for almost 2 decades. And so there's a lot of interesting work that the both of you are doing together. I want to get into that. Did I miss anything about your career that you want to add? Did I get it kind of close?
No, I think it's pretty good. I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I'm born and bred, but I live in Brussels, Belgium at the moment. So it's been a pretty interesting journey for me. Indeed, I was at Victoria's Secret for many, many years. And kind of made the decision to kind of move into a software vendor, and kind of that has kind of brought me to sales roles, product roles, and now I'm here as the chief product officer at Sitecore, and it's been a wild ride. So,
yeah, amazing. What got you to Europe? You grew up in the United States, of course.
I did, and so when I was at Victoria's Secret, we were working. I was working with one of our software vendors that was actually implementing digital asset management technology, and they were kind of doing something that I had seen before in the space. They were new entrants, and they were based in Brussels, Belgium. So I started working with them actually only in New York in their sales organization. And when Sitecore acquired them, I decided, maybe I want to kind of get closer to the tech and actually start building some things. And so they said, well, why don't you come work with the engineers here in Brussels? So it took me here. So.
Nice. It's funny because I hadn't really heard of Sitecore until I spoke to some people that I'm really close with at Microsoft. And I found out that just how much of a relationship this has been over the years as things have changed in the technology space. So give the audience a sense of this quiet company, but quite big and impactful. Can you tell us a little bit about Sitecore?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Sitecore was founded, I want to say early 2000s, late 90s. It was a bunch of folks in really a small group of guys that were working in Copenhagen. They, I think, realized that kind of trying to build websites when the .com boom was happening was a lot of repetitive tasks. And so I said, maybe we should build a software solution to actually support web content management, so I don't have to keep doing this over and over again. So really kind of the idea of repeatable web components. And so they were at the time running, they're .NET. We've been a .NET shop our whole lives as a company. And, at the time you could kind of pick either Adobe, which was kind of a more of a Java oriented kind of CMS, or you could pick the .NET flavor, which would be Sitecore. And so that's kind of why we've been kind of really working so closely with Microsoft all these years. It's a very special relationship for sure.
What are some of the other ways, or talk about Sitecore and just your customer profile? What kind of stuff do you do for people? I think about you guys as a marketing automation. Now that you guys have AI in the mix, it's kind of AI plus Marcom. But like, how do you describe the work that you do and the value that you bring to customers?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's something that's evolved over the years. And so, as I mentioned, the folks that kind of started the company, they really started with the website builder, right? The web CMS solution. But over the years, I think the categories continue to evolve to bring in elements of marketing automation and data and personalization. And about 5 years or so ago, Sitecore also acquired kind of components that were sitting upstream in the marketing space. So things around content operations and digital asset management. So Sitecore now sits in a position where we can deliver the entirety of the content supply chain, from kind of strategy, ideation, creation, review, and approval, all the way through to delivery of experiences. So we really kind of have the full kind of 360 loop of the content lifecycle.
And so it's all sorts of content, right? It could be images, video, advertising, and on lots of different channels, right? Can you talk about the channels that you guys support?
Yeah, for sure. So our objective really is to be as agnostic to channel as we can in terms of actually being able to deliver content. Our bread and butter has been the web channel for sure. Yeah. But the ability for us to actually help customers kind of curate, manage, and ultimately deliver content of any type to any channel is kind of the bread and butter of what it is that we do.
Yeah, that's amazing. So one customer that came to my attention that I think is interesting, and I'd like for you to explore the relationship between this customer, which is Nestle, American company, and Microsoft and you guys. Can you just talk a little bit and maybe paint the picture for how you help them and how all these kind of tools come together? I'm assuming they're using Dynamics and they're using Azure and they're using lots of other things. Can you explain to the audience a little bit about the Nestle project?
Yeah, sure. So Nestle made a selection to use Sitecore to really kind of sit as the backbone of their content ecosystem. So every piece of content that is in use at Nestle is actually being driven through our software. And they're really a progressive company in terms of trying to innovate and actually kind of figure out how they can really change the game in terms of content creation. And so they came to us with a view that they wanted to start leveraging some of these generative AI capabilities in their content supply chain. And so we've been working with them for probably the last 2 years to kind of develop a net new capability at Sitecore called the brand assistant, which actually allows us to actually ingest all of their brand heritage, their documents, their guidelines, and actually create a brand assistant that can actually work alongside their marketers to actually educate them about the brand, ground all of the content that they create against the brand as well. So it's been and that's really kind of just one step of a much bigger program that we have in mind for them. But that's the history of I would say the last 18 months.
It's so interesting, when I think about marketing and especially design, it's very typical that there'd be a design guidelines package. And, that would follow all sorts of folks around making sure that there was clarity and consistency with the outreach and all the advertising and images and so on. Now, it sounds like this assistant is filling that function. I'm sure there's still a document, but now there's also a way to use conversational AI to make sure new hires are up to speed, make sure everybody is thinking about this brand language in a consistent way. Am I thinking about that right? Is that right?
100%. And I think when we kind of started this, it was kind of like, okay, everybody first reached for generating text content, right? That was probably the safest space to play in initially. Media is still a little bit out of bounds for a lot of companies, certainly large brands, but they were looking for us to kind of help them with generative AI for content, for text creation. And all of the content would come out and be very flat. It wouldn't really kind of have any kind of life. It's kind of very generic. And so we said, okay, well, let's ground the AI and actually against a brand let's say, brand brain or a brand DNA that can actually kind of inform your tone of voice and things like that. And then, so then we started to get really generative content that actually was on brand and on message. And then so we said, okay, this is pretty interesting, but they started to use it in other ways for onboarding their users and onboarding their marketers. And so when you're a company like Nestle, you've got thousands of brands, it's really hard for you to move marketers from like one brand to the other because they really have to start over, learning the tone of voice, learning the way to kind of think about certain initiatives and speaking in the voice of that particular brand, which is, could be completely divorced from the brand that they're coming from. And this brand assistant gave them the ability to actually onboard these folks much more rapidly. So it's been, it's kind of a bit of happy accident. And now we're getting into things like, the creation of creative briefs as well. So being able to use generative AI to take contextual data, take your past performance of your campaigns, take your asset repository, make recommendations on assets for your next campaign. And so it's really kind of changing the entire experience for a marketer to generate content.
And now, before we dive deeper, I want to take a quick moment and tell you a little bit about one of our podcast partners. As a listener of this show, I know you're trying to stay on top of all things AI and tech, which is why you have to check out the amazing GeekWire podcast, produced by GeekWire and hosted by Todd Bishop. It's a treasure of insights featuring industry leaders and the latest tech trends that are shaping our world. It's the perfect companion podcast to Shift AI. GeekWire podcast is where technology meets curiosity and covers the world of technology, startups, and geek culture. Expand your tech horizons and join the conversation. Tune into the GeekWire podcast today, a perfect complement to our own discussions here. Don't miss out. Follow the GeekWire podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite listening app. Now back to the episode. So you're at the tip of the spear on this stuff with some pretty big companies. Obviously, they have tons of different brands within Nestle's. That makes perfect sense. Companies like Kellogg and Nestle and all these kind of folks that, how else would you kind of keep track of all the brand voices in a day and age of Gen AI? How about non-text related stuff? What are you seeing out there with images and video? I know it's early, but there's a bunch of interesting tools out there that are coming out that allow you to do this with like very sophisticated imagery for commercials and advertising. What are you seeing out there?
It's an interesting one because I think where we see it being used much more in the inspiration space. So I think everybody's comfortable using it to kind of to think and brainstorm about a particular campaign. So using generative media and generative video to kind of at least become inspired is something that I think that's pretty good white space right now. Everybody would we're not there yet, but we're looking at ways in which we can kind of satisfy that. Creating media that you're actually comfortable actually putting into market is a little bit of a different beast. And that's, I think we're seeing much more sensitivity in terms of brands being ready to do that. But we do see people trying to take some steps. So Coca-Cola has done this, and you've seen others that have basically tried to put campaigns in market that are kind of using these tools. I'm just completely blown away by the speed in which these tools are improving, though. I mean, I had seen a video like when Sora was announced, and Sora is probably now dated and old news by this point, but it had been a step change almost materially from the 3 months that happened prior in terms of what was possible with video generation. I think it's just disrupting the entire ecosystem around creative. Brands, I think, and agencies, I think, particularly are going to struggle, I think, to figure out how do they play in this space. And I think you see them making a lot of investments in AI, because I think their traditional revenue streams actually could be potentially under pressure.
I'm seeing the writing on the wall. I mean, Sora and Runway and all these tools are creating some pretty interesting content. I mean, sometimes like the Coca-Cola commercial is a good example. There was if you looked really closely, there were some things that were a little bit off, but man, I mean, it's pretty impressive. And I can see a future where some percentage of these advertisements are going to have something that is generative. Don't you agree?
I totally do. And I think most people, if you stay close to the tech and you're paying attention and you're revisiting it kind of regularly, I think you'd be amazed. So I would say anybody listening or watching this that is not taking some of these newer techs for a spin lately, I would say give it another look, because I think you'll be blown away by kind of the advancements that have been made. Because I think if you use them in the past, I think you might have been dismissive of it, or maybe you said, you know what, this is just a fad. I don't believe it's a fad. I think the wave is upon us. We have to figure out how to ride the wave. And I think that's what we're hoping that we can do for our customers.
One thing I've heard because of the power of these tools, and I think this is just going to be amplified as time goes on, is it's the phenomenon of content volume. Like, and one of the things that one of the metaphors is like, okay, we all can have a YouTube channel and we can all create tons of content and put that out there. There's still a very small percentage of YouTube channels that are doing really, really well. And so in a future where content is just easy to create and costs very, very little, there's going to be a ton of it, right? But the excellent content, the excellent advertisements, the excellent commercials, the ones that really go viral, the ones that scale are still going to be a small percentage relative to the whole. And so as you think about that kind of future, where it's just, we're just bombarded by content because it's so easy to make, how do you think about that?
For us, I think what we think is the biggest value our customers have is the content that they've already invested in.
Yeah.
Right. And so, there is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into creating a long list of heritage content. Like, let's take Nestle for an example.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to actually allow them to tell their story with their voice is what will allow them to stand out in the future as well. And so, I think it's going to be as important as ever to make sure that you're authentic and you're on brand in this new world, because you will be bombarded with so much content, right? So I think the brand almost has to be even more impactful than it was in the past, because it's pretty much all you'll have to differentiate yourself in that space.
Yeah. Well, here's a question that's a little controversial. People, every single time I bring this up in any event that I put on or a talk that I do, people are scared. People are scared about their jobs getting taken away. People are scared about becoming irrelevant. And I wonder, in the marketing space, where you have very creative people thinking about storytelling in very specific ways, are you hearing that? And what are you thinking about the future of work in this space and the way that people are going to stay relevant so these stories and these brand voices can stay authentic?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, because I think we're not quite to a place where we've got full agentic workflows in a lot of organizations. And I think organizations will adopt these tools at various speeds. But I would say I think the first step is certainly, how do I kind of address the fact that I've got a lot of folks that are very skilled and very, very creative. They do a ton of menial tasks that have nothing to do with why they're sitting in a particular role. Yeah. That's been the case for a very long time. But how do we kind of take some of that load away so that they can really move up in the value chain and actually be doing much more high value activities more frequently, right? That's the first step. I think as this kind of continues to evolve, and as I mentioned, I think the creativity and I think really being able to kind of come up with that big creative idea, I think it's going to require, that specialty skill. I think the difficulty will be, how do we train people up to that specialty skill if we take away the traditional roles that allow people to develop them and be mentored in an organization and things like that, right? So I see the marketer kind of feeling the same constraints as an engineer, right? Where maybe some of the low-level engineering tasks can be automated and be done, but you really need that really bright 20-year architect that's been doing this for a long time. So you got now these two really bright, super successful, super skilled individuals that the 20 years of experience that they have, we might be taking some of those years away from the person that's just getting started now. So it is an interesting dynamic that I'm not sure we have an answer to yet.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I always like to learn about people's mentors on the show and kind of understand, are they mentoring other people? But you bring up a great point. Like, how are we going to train the next generation? And for you, you're at a high level in this company. Like, how do you think about mentorship as you look back on your career and you think about people inside this company? Our company is going to have to be really intentional about how they do it, and not just let the normal kind of, working on, stuff as a junior person in a firm, allowing you to kind of make your way up to the higher levels in an organization.
It's really difficult. I mean, I think it's been made more difficult with the pandemic, right? I think we went to a remote workforce. I think that, combined with some of the recent technology trends, is making it challenging for you to actually build those real meaningful relationships. And so a lot of the water cooler moments that you would have growing up in your career, at least I did. I'm not sure if you had similar experiences, but those are the relationships that probably got somebody's attention and maybe changed the course of your career. I think we got to find ways to create those touch points with folks nowadays. And I think it's something we have to actively work at because I don't think it'll just come naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, as you think about the things that you're the most excited about in the future within your space, like what kind of things come to mind, especially on the AI side of things, and especially in the ways that it'll fundamentally change work in how people work? What are some of those things that are a little farther out there that you've been thinking about?
We talk about this a lot because, primarily we are trying to help brands communicate with their customers. And I think this has been, the customers are now expecting to deal with you on their own terms in whatever device and channel that they want to be present in. But that's still a very two-dimensional space, still even today. And I think as we see, and I think I've seen some of what you've worked on in your past, is got to how to bridge the kind of augmented reality, the virtual/augmented reality with the physical world. I feel like we're kind of almost there. It's like AI kind of leapfrogged that 3D kind of AR, VR type stuff, but it's in the background rolling, and it's just going to be there. And I think kind of when we start to get into real immersive experiences where we're delivering content in that type of augmented context, I think that's what I'm super excited about. There's a book I read like years and years ago, Snow Crash, which is by Neil Stephenson.
I remember that book.
The hero would wear like these glasses and it would give him a full overlay of augmented reality. And I'm like, man, we're like literally right there, So
can we double down on that a little bit? There's a friend of mine in Los Angeles who has a company called Digital Rights Management. His name is Neil Mant, and super interesting company. I'll share some stuff with you after the show, but his vision is that brands will be advertising on surfaces of all kinds. When you go to university and you walk through the quad, there's going to be imagery all over the place. When you go to a sports game, and it already is, but it's just going to be amplified. When you go to Times Square, when you go to, and even for emergency situations, where you might be driving down the road and things are going to be called out to you and protect you, but that there's this layer that we can't even see right now is going to be everywhere. And for you guys, I mean, you've got to be, that's just another channel for you. That's going to be the third channel, this three-dimensional channel. Is that's being talked about right now inside the organization?
For sure. And my view is brands are always going to want to be able to deliver the right content to the right consumer at the right time.
Yep.
Like that is an evergreen problem. That doesn't go away. So I think the benefit of Sitecore is, hey, we solved that problem. That's fantastic, right? The way in which that's done and the channel, the glass in which that's experienced has always been changing. And so I think our ability to be able to kind of structure and deliver that content at the right time to kind of read the signals as to what's working, what's not working, for us is kind of evergreen. Even in a world where we have that type of augmented reality where, there's a layer kind of not in the visible spectrum that people can interact with, I think ultimately companies are going to look to us and companies like us to basically deliver content into those experiences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And AI generation is going to be part of that story too, just like it is now with these very 2D elements, text and images. 3D is definitely going to be part of that situation. It's funny, about my background. I've been waiting a long time for 3D to kind of make its way into the world. And when I was at Meta and everybody got sent home, we did a lot of work with headsets and trying to make that experience more present for people. Of course, I have a pair of the glasses too. And so I'm kind of like starting to squint my eyes and starting to see the future a little bit about what AI can be both with voice recognition and visually. And it is really powerful. So I can imagine that you guys are thinking about how to deliver that content, of course. So I always like to end the show the same way. I want you to describe the future of work, the future of AI, maybe the future of AI and marketing in 2 words only, but then you can elaborate. So if you're going to describe the future of AI at work, what would those 2 words be?
For me, the future of work is going to be seamless, and is going to be freeing.
Seamless and freeing. Okay, yeah. Elaborate.
And I think what will happen is I think a lot of the friction that I think folks kind of experience when they're going through their daily work, I think ultimately will be offset. And I think you're already starting to see some of that with even just some of the simple things that we see with Microsoft Copilot, like setting up your day and prepping you for your daily agenda, things like that. Like those are things that used to take a lot of energy and time and focus away from the actual work that you had to get done. And so I feel like, stripping away some of that friction and allowing you to harness all of your energy towards the thing that you're really looking to focus on, I think is going to be incredible. And I think that will then, free people up to actually kind of really double down on the things that are important to them and what matter to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think things are going to get more creative. I mean, I certainly think there's going to be more stuff everywhere, digital stuff everywhere. But I think you're right. I think very, very smart, creative people are going to have more time to do what they do best. I think that's pretty exciting.
For sure.
So Roger, thank you for being on the show. I was really excited to hear about the work that you guys are doing, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out in the future. So thanks again for being on the Shift AI podcast.
Oh, you're very welcome, Boaz. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Cheers. That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. What a great conversation with Roger Connolly from Sitecore. His perspective on how AI is transforming the marketing landscape, from creating brand consistent content to building AI assistants that help marketers stay on message, gives us a fascinating glimpse into how major brands are adapting to this technological shift. Roger's thoughts on the seamless and freeing future of work where AI eliminates friction and allows creative professionals to focus on higher value activities highlights both the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead. If you're interested in learning more about Sitecore and their innovative work in content management and AI-powered marketing solutions, you can find them at sitecore.com. I continue to be amazed by the guests we've had on the show, and I'm excited about the ones joining us in the near future. I truly appreciate you spending your time with us. Thank you for listening to this episode, and don't forget to subscribe to the Shift AI podcast for more exciting interviews, and to the Augmented Edge newsletter for updates on how AI can help you scale your business. The Shift AI podcast is syndicated by GeekWire, and we're grateful to have the show sponsored by Augmented AI Labs. Our theme music was created by Dave Angel.